Welcome to Sonic Legacy, where we dive into the timeless tales and transformative tunes that have shaped generations.
The true architect of the sound, it being Stone Gossard, and the man is he's very important for what grunge became.
I always liked Stone because I think he sort of married, any movement has to have followers. And the only way to get followers is to expand. You have to kind of dangle a little bit of stuff out. And you were saying, so many of these bands were influenced by Black Sabbath. That I always talk about that drop D tuning, which if you're tuning a guitar, that bottom string is normally your higher E, right? And if you eliminate that and make that a D, now it never goes above that D, right? And so it gives it more of a sense of doom, of course. Everything kind of sounds minor key-ish.
Tones,
lower tones. And that was a lot of what Sabbath did, and I think a lot of people were kind of, hey, let's kind of go back to that, or that was an influence for them. That was legitimate music, right? But I think the thing that Stone Gossard brought to that was, hey, we can do that, and we can sound a little bit like that, but let's have some melody in it. Let's have some sugar. Let's sprinkle some sugar in here to get some things. We're talking about these bands, how they break up and form, and the thing with Andy Wood, who you and I both love, was in a band called Malfunction with his Andy's brother Kevin,
right,
and Regan Hagar, who's the drummer.
Yep.
And Malfunction was sort of middling. It didn't really go anywhere. I'm not saying the music wasn't good, but it kind of reached a point where it wasn't going to go anywhere. But Andy is like, so, the Pacific Northwest, the people there, I'm going to probably get hit for this, but it's a little passive aggressive, like they're just, you could probably, today we call it ghosting people.
Yeah.
I think when we get to Nirvana, we talk about how Kurt would do that too. You're fired, but I'm not going to tell you that. Yeah. You're going to find out through some other way. You'll know, but I'm not telling you.
But I'm not. Yeah, I didn't do it.
Yeah, but Andy kind of left his brother and Regan behind a little bit, to go with Mother Love Bone. I think he sensed the talent there with Stone and Jeff. I think he really did. And how could you not? How could you not?
Well, look, the testament is those guys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now with Pearl Jam, and they're still touring strong. And look, side note, because as you know, my better half is a huge Pearl Jam fan. We're actually going to go see Pearl Jam in Florida and then Nashville here in the next couple of weeks. Their latest album, Dark Matter, it's
phenomenal.
It's
for a later release.
Top 3, and they're 30 some odd years into their career. They just released an album that I would put up there after 10 and Versus. I'd put Dark Matter, and maybe Dark Matter before Versus. I'm not sure yet. It's that good, and I'm not. Again, you know me. I'm a Kiss Night Ranger guy. Dark Matter is a phenomenally good album.
Well, the good thing about relationships, sometimes I always tell people, is like your better half, is that they really do introduce you to something else, because they're going to be listening. They have their life, right? They have the things that they like, and they're going to be listening to it. And if you listen to something enough, you'll like it. I can promise you that. Like I said, my mom was a big John Denver fan. I will put my John Denver fandom up against anybody's. I know in a grunge podcast here.
I'll edit that out.
Because you hear that, you can edit that. Yeah, I know. The eggs are coming. Well, I'm just saying, if you're around someone long enough, like Dolly Parton, if you listen to classic country growing up as a kid, and your parents just shovel it down your throat, eventually it's, oh my God, I actually kind of like this. I see what people like in it.
Listen, that was Q102's sole existence.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
Just hammer you with.
Our dear friend Kevin Hayes said it once, and I'm going to misquote him here. He says, "People in Cincinnati only know what they were told they like."
Yeah, very true.
All you know is what you're told to like by Q102 or WEBN. You didn't no one ventured out and tried new music.
Well, one of the fun things about grunge too is, especially in music, because and this is going to tie what your point there. And so with a town like Cincinnati, it's a Midwestern town. It's not that big, so it's not big enough to support indie acts all the way down the line. So there's going to be bands that you had never heard of, but you go away to college from a kid that was from Chicago. Chicago, they can have a station because they only need so many listeners, right? Yeah. So they can play these they can play all this indie stuff, and they know who the Melvins are. Trust me, they know.
Yeah, we did
not. They know who they knew Nirvana before Nirvana was Nirvana. I mean, Nirvana played down the road here in Cincinnati on the tour for Bleach, that I was sitting in my house and like didn't know what I was missing, right? Because we only would have been focused on these big acts. I would have been at a Def Leppard show or a Don Henley show,
absolutely,
right? You would have been at something like that.
Yeah, I would have never gone down to Bogarts. I send you clips all the time of shows that we missed. Like, why did we miss this?
Yeah. And then there's, there were so many genres, and where would you put this grunge stuff? You probably would have put it in. We would have called it alternative, probably, but it really wasn't. It was.
Think about the biggest band that probably come out of Cincinnati in that time frame. Do you know who I would talk about? The Afghan
Voices or the Afghan Wigs. There you go. Okay, yeah. There you go. And what's funny was I would have thought that you would not have said Afghan Wigs.
The Afghan Wigs are from Cincinnati, but
they're from Cincinnati.
They're from Cincinnati. I don't think they're there anymore. They left.
No.
And they became something, but not. They were never. Look, I was a local musician in Cincinnati for years. I know plenty of guys who are still playing that scene, and Cincinnati is a brutally hard town to play original music in because they don't want to hear it.
No, right. Well, that's like I said, that you're not in a Midwest town. You're not going to be exposed to that. Your palate is going to be you're almost going to be like a kid with I have to have French fries and hot dogs.
Yes.
In a comparison, you're not going to open up to it, and it's very hard to. And I remember going through that thing too. I remember, a band like, and here again, you'll laugh. A band like The Cure probably changed my life for 6 months.
Yeah.
Just hearing stuff that I had never heard. In other words, someone said, "Oh, we were listening to this 5 years ago, or whatever it was, 4 years ago," and I'm going, "Where was I?" So,
yeah,
but exposing yourself to that and hearing it through a significant other or a best friend or someone, it really opens up your mind to. Yeah, the fact that number one, music is kind of the same. It's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. But it's
you had to work to find new music in Cincinnati. I felt that. I could.
You had to. Yes. Or it could have been there. It could have been there.
Scour the bins.
Yeah. No. Exactly. If you're at a Camelot Music at Eastgate Mall, you're at a Camelot Music, and you're seeing this section this long, and you and I are in this. We're shopping here.
Well, I wasn't even shopping there. I had Kevin and Brent. Kevin Hayes is I found out about Temple of the Dog through Kevin Hayes. I didn't know that was even a project. Kevin calls me, he goes, "Hey man, I got this cassette came in, it was a promo, you can have it, we're never going to listen to it here." I went up and got it. I said, "What is it?" He goes, "It's something about a tribute to Andrew Wood, that guy from Mother Love Bone." I had no idea what it was. And then I wore it out in my tape deck. But I would have never...
Oh, of course, yeah.
Of course, again, we're talking pre-internet, so if it wasn't in the back of Circus Magazine, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. All right, pick up with your timeline. It's enjoyable.
So, in 1988, Soundgarden releases their debut album, Ultra Mega OK. I did not have that one. 1988, Mudhoney also releases Super Fuzz Big Muff EP, helping define the raw Seattle sound. And from there, we'll jump to the Sub Pop era. So, around 1986, the Sub Pop record label enters the story. And this is a big turning point. Founded by Bruce, is it Pavitt?
Bruce Pavitt, yes, sir.
Pavitt and Jonathan Poneman?
Yep.
Is it Poneman?
It's Poneman, yep.
Poneman. So Bruce Pavitt and Jonathan Poneman form Sub Pop, becomes the hub for grunge. They weren't just putting out records. They were curating a whole vibe. Lo-fi aesthetics, grainy black and white press shots, limited vinyl runs. It was raw on purpose. They signed early acts like Mudhoney, Tad, and Soundgarden and helped nurture this underground movement into something cohesive. And by 1988, and Sub Pop released a split single by two bands you might have heard of, Mudhoney and a little-known group at the time called Nirvana. Nirvana's debut album, Bleach, drops in 1989. It was heavy, unpolished, and full of potential, but no one could have guessed what was coming next. So the scene now, from 89 to 91, and again, we're going to go off on tangents here, but we're going to talk for a minute here. So 1989, Mother Love Bone releases Shine. 5-song EP. I had this thing. It was, for me, it changed things for me. So there's points in my life where music meant more to me than certain artists. This album changed a lot for me. It made me see music a little different. The same way Don Henley did. The same way Kiss did in 1977 when I first understood music a little more than I did at 7 years of age. this was another highlight of my life, as the Shine EP from Mother Love Bone. I never heard anything like it. I didn't understand it, but I loved it. I knew there's something about it that it resonated with me. Of course, 1989, Nirvana releases Bleach, their debut album on Sub Pop. I did not know of this album until after they released Nevermind. That's when I came back. 89, you also get Soundgarden releases Louder Than Love, their first major label album. Because wasn't Soundgarden the first group to get a major label deal?
They were the first one, yes, sir. A&M, yes.
So they sold out first. Awesome. In 1990, Andrew Wood, Mother Love Bone, dies of a heroin overdose. So this is a key moment in the scene. 1990, Alice in Chains releases We Die Young, EP. 1990, also Mother Love Bone's debut album, Apple, was released after Andrew's death, of course, which in a previous episode, I did a tribute to Andrew Wood, and critics even said that Andrew Wood would have been the first Seattle superstar. He would have been that big. He was that big of life and personality. I know we're talking a lot about Andy Wood here, but that's because we both have a deep love for Andrew Wood. So you get from Apple's release to 1990, you also get Temple of the Dog, which is a tribute to Andrew Wood, featuring, of course, his roommate and friend, Chris Cornell, who was so deeply affected by the death of Andrew Wood that he sat down and wrote Say Hello to Heaven, which most people, I'm sure, have heard that song, but man, that's just powerful. I can't imagine that kind of grief and be able to express yourself that way. But, Temple of the Dog brings together Chris Cornell, Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, of course, from Mother Love Bone, who are just kind of circling. Like, they don't know what to do. They went from Green River to Mother Love Bone, and now it's gone. Like, they were on the verge, and it's gone. They bring in Mike McCready, and a young friend of theirs, a little young singer named Eddie Vedder, joins it for some background vocals on a song called Hunger Strike. Boy, life was about to change for those boys. 1991, we see Nirvana releasing Nevermind, which I think, and you can tell me, Alan, was that the sonic boom that changed everything? Was it Nevermind?
Yeah.
Because you go to that, you get 91, you get Nevermind, you get 10 from Pearl Jam, and you get Bad Motorfinger from Soundgarden, and you get Facelift from Alice in Chains.
You can. Yeah,
1 year.
You could probably say 10. You could probably say Nevermind, but the combination, I think they're a month apart. They're a month apart.
Smells Like Teen Spirit.
But that brought the attention to everything. That illuminated. That was the light. That was the light. That thing. And then that song. And you would ask me earlier to kind of like say, hey, let's talk about like maybe 5 important essential Cobain or Nirvana song, and that one's so obvious that you're just like, okay, well, we'll just start with that, but it doesn't count because it's
we don't count that. That'd be on your list, but that's number 6.
It is a monster. That song is a monster. I remember
did Kurt
it coming out.
That song.
Yeah, absolutely. He would also weaponize it. If you were mean to an opening act, especially if he would bring a group and they would be all girls. He'd bring L7 on the road with him. If you were mean to them, then he would just tease it the whole show and never play it. He could be real petty. but yeah, no, he grew to hate it. And again, it's one of those things where, as I was saying earlier, it always goes back to this. Musicians have this thing where what I'm doing is sacrosanct. And, I'm telling you, he loved the Melvins. He worshiped the Melvins. He loved that heavy. Loved Black Flag, right? He loves punk. He wants to keep in that range. And when you listen to an album like Bleach, you hear a lot of that kind of stuff. But then he was sort of desperate. And we'll talk about this later, but you write a little bit. You write a song like "Smells Like Teen Spirit" to really bring people in, and I just don't quite think he wanted it quite that many
I'm sure
people
he
in.
had zero idea that he was about to change the world.
I mean, Chris looked at him and said, "What is this riff? It sounds like Boston's More Than a Feeling."
Yeah,
it sounds like More Than a Feeling. And what are we doing? What's this? And then it turns into this thing, and again, it's but we'll talk about that.
So let's talk about 1991. I got some notes here. 1991, the explosion is I'm going to call it here. The year 1991 changed everything. That's when Nirvana released their second album, Nevermind. the lead single, Smells Like Teen Spirit, hit MTV, and suddenly this scrappy trio from Aberdeen, Washington, was being called the voice of a generation, which I'm sure Kurt hated that. But this album, I mean, talk about how big this album is. It knocked Michael Jackson out of the #1 spot on Billboard. I mean, Michael Jackson, the king of pop, was taken down by a trio guys who played with guitars that were slightly out of tune.
And they didn't print enough albums, and you couldn't. And they didn't make enough, so it was selling quicker than it was. They were stuck. They're down in Australia. They're in New Zealand. They're in Asia. They're not even here. And the label's like, get these guys back. Get
them out of that van. Get them on a private jet.
Yes. Yeah.
They're eating peanut butter with their fingers. So then right behind Nirvana was Pearl Jam, who debut album 10, which I would contend is one of the best debut albums of all time.
Yeah.
It's up there. I'm
one of the best albums, period, of all time.
I'd say album, yes, but debuts. I mean, you got stuff. Look, I don't know if there's a bad song on that album. I'm sure there's people that would say there is, but like if you're just being honest, what an epic piece of vinyl. Anyway, 10 comes out the same year with Eddie Vedder's deep emotional voice, more anthemic songwriting. They appealed to both alt-rock kids and the classic rock fans. Also in 1991, Soundgarden releases Bad Motorfinger, and Alice in Chains broke through with Facelift, featuring the single Man in the Box, which I would contend is one of the greatest examples of just in-your-face, chunking along, grungy sound. They leaned darker with harmonies that felt haunted, and I think that's a really accurate description. Especially Lane Staley's voice was just unique.
It is so unique. I mean, you mix it with Jerry Cantrell.
Yes.
So there's two lead singers. You mix it with Jerry Cantrell, and then you get this. I mean, it's Everly Brothers-esque. What I mean is the harmony is something that you're like, whoa! Give me more of that.
Right. Whatever that is, I like it.
Over that instrumentation, which Alice in Chains were a hair band a la Poison.
Yes.
And they're messing around with Soundgarden one night, and it's like, what are you doing there? He's like, well, we just do this drop D tuning, and that changed Alice in Chains. It sounded cool, and it matched that. It matches that sound, and they were wanting to catch on the Magic Carpet Ride too. But they were not a sub pop band. I mean, they weren't, but they were around. They were another band that was around Seattle forever. But you could make an argument that they are the best. I mean, I know people who worship Alice in Chains. I mean, to the point where they're the best. Well, they're not they're my third favorite one probably, but right. I love them. And what I love.
So I'm the same way. There are songs that I love by Alice in Chains that I love them. I just love them. I still love Man in the Box. Of course, I love the song Wood. I don't love the song Rooster, which we can talk about later. It's not that it's bad. I just think it's okay. It doesn't hit me the way I think it hits most people. It's haunting. I will agree with that. It just doesn't hit me the way it was other songs do. But anyway, so along with that grunge with a metal edge, which is what Alice in Chains and all that was, you'd also get something called Temple of the Dog, which I talked about just a minute ago. A supergroup featuring Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, paying tribute to their late friend Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. Their song "Hunger Strike" became an anthem for what might have been, and I still love to hear that song. I mean, God, I've been texting you. I've been on this Seattle sound for a couple weeks now, and I still love Temple of the Dog. It's just a great disc. So by 1992, grunge was everywhere. Radio, MTV, fashion magazines, flannel shirts, everybody had them. Doc Martens and a kind of reluctant fame to find the moment. Grunge wasn't trying to be cool. It became cool because it felt so real. It was the music for misfits and burned out kids, the ones who didn't buy into the shiny American dream vibe of the late 1980s. That's just what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So you get this era from 92 to 94. We'll talk about some highlights of those years. 92, you get Temple of the Dog's self-titled album. Gained, was that 92 or 91? I feel like I had that in...
I think That was 91. But
Yeah. Okay. My timeline's wrong. That I think it was supposed to be up one.
or I'm wrong.
No. Anyway, so 92 you also get Singles, the movie soundtrack, which features Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, of course. Then Alice in Chains releases Dirt. Nirvana releases In Utero, which I love that album. I know you being a big Nirvana fan, we could talk about that. We're going to do a thing about Kurt Cobain. I really enjoy In Utero. Amongst my group of friends, I think I was the only one who did enjoy it. All my friends were like, horrible, they're done, Doesn't have Smells Like Teen Spirit on it. I was like, no, but it has All Apologies, and it has Heart-Shaped Box, and it has Penny Royal Tea. So, it's good. Pearl Jam did In Utero. Nirvana releases in 93. They released Versus, which broke sales records for another album release. Soundgarden releases Super Unknown, which was a monster. You had Black Hole Sun, which is the big one off of that one. Of course, sadly, in 94, Cobain dies. And we're going to talk about that in depth here in a little bit. And then 1994, Alice in Chains releases Jar of Flies, which is the first EP to debut at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. And then also in 94, Pearl Jam releases Vitalogy, which for me at the time, that was the last Pearl Jam album I bought or listened to until Teresa and I got together 13, 14 years ago. I drifted away from Pearl Jam after Vitalogy. They just kind of got, I don't know how to explain it. I just drifted away from them, but have come way back hard with them now. And I think they're one of the great rock bands of our time. Any comments on any of that stuff, Alan? Alice in Chains, In Utero?
Well, In Utero was, both of those are great records. Both of those are follow-ups to massive hits. So a lot of people are going to say, well, it's disappointing. It never could be that. I think Kurt wore that, heavy on his shoulders. He's trying, but obviously you want to run from a record like Nevermind because it's you just want to come out with something totally different just to sort of rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with, that you're not going to try to do that.
And you can't live up to it.
And you can't.
No one's ever done it. Michael Jackson didn't do it after Thriller. Guns N' Roses failed miserably after Appetite for Destruction.
But listen to a record like Thriller, and then listen to an album like Bad, and see how bad Michael Jackson is trying to mimic what he did. It's almost track by track. There's the Dirty Diana song that matches this sort of song, and there's he Beat It matches this. I'm going to have Stevie. I'm going to have. He's trying to be a formula, and there's all sorts of the stories go on, and I'll pick even even someone kind of lame like Survivor. If I had Vital Signs, they tried to, When Seconds Count was like Vital Signs Part 2. It doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't, because you're trying too hard. It's not going to be as good. So you need to go the other direction. And to me, In Utero now, listening to it is another direction, but with the passage of time, it doesn't sound that far removed from Nevermind to me. At least the hits don't. It's Kurt. There's a great sense of melody on it. There's great lyrics. The songs are powerful. Like, who doesn't listen to Heart-Shaped Box and go? I mean, that just
to me,
like a rocket.
The difference is, it's just production. Nevermind was really, really raw. Probably because they didn't have a lot of money. In Utero, they were superstars. They had more money. The sound was a little polished. It's not their fault. That's a studio. That's people.
Well, it wasn't. It was. And to your point, Butch Vig produced the first one, and Butch, as you know, went on to do Garbage. Butch is a pop sort of guy, right? I mean, Kurt wrote these songs. Yes, they had pop. Butch is going to make it sound good. When they went in with Steve Albini, he recorded it very raw. Kurt wanted it just to kind of like a live, like a punk record, right? Well, then the studio steps in and says, well, so they stepped in and polished it up and made it into something that they didn't really create. And again, was the studio wrong? I don't know. Some of the songs sound really good.
Here's the thing, Alan. I don't understand about this, and I'd love to talk to a studio head, and maybe we will get a chance sometime in our futures. But why can't you just get out of the way?
Because it's about sales, and if it doesn't sell, heads roll.
But this is a super group that are on top of the world. get out of the way.
Yeah.
And if if the sophomore album fails, then you go, now we do it our way.
Yeah, but that's a very expensive way of doing business. I think Kurt would have
I think they made their money though.
No, I know, but I think Kurt would have, and I'm not saying Kurt would have sabotaged, but Kurt would have said, "Hey, I kind of want to go back more to a punkier song, just a little bit more raw."
Do you imagine if he was still
not so
alive
much
today
melody.
with the accessibility to just put your own music out, and not have to deal with a label? I want to say, I don't want to use the word Joy and Kurt in the same sense because I don't know if he ever had Joy, but just the happiness he would have had to be able to, no one telling him what to do. I'm going to sit in my studio, I'm going to write my songs, and I don't have to ask your permission, and I don't need anything to polish it. I'm just going to sell my music. It's like, to put up an example, why would you ever get in Prince's way? Why would you ever say to Prince, hey, here's an idea I have. Do you know who you're talking to? He doesn't need another musician. He doesn't need a producer. He doesn't need anyone. Just needs you to get out of his way is what he needs you to do. And then distribute it. That's all he needs.
There's a gentleman I know. I do a little rock and roll memorabilia collecting, and there's a gentleman I know who's the former vice president of Warner Brother Records. His name is Jeff Gold, and his website is recordmecca.com. If you ever get a chance to go to it, he sells old records and posters, and sometimes he gets some pretty important stuff in. He sold some of the stuff at Kurt's, believe it or not. But he was also.
On the show.
Maybe we should. He does a blog on this Record Mecca site, and he was also the art director for Warner Brothers, and he did the Diamonds and Pearls covers for Prince.
Oh, wow.
And he talks about working for him. And Prince is another one of those ones, but no, you're not. You weren't really going to tell him what to do, and you were, but he had to kind of come up with this idea and kind of pitch it to him and really work. He had to do the work. He kind of like what you said, Prince. You're not going to tell him. Prince is going to be the boss of that, but this In Utero is one of those records. It's very controversial for whatever reason, just because it's not Nevermind, which is a terrible thing because there's some real gems on there. I think it's a pretty good listen front to back. I think it's aged. Too. I think it's aged. Yeah, it's aged tremendously.
Listen, I can vividly remember I was living in an apartment with friends of ours, mutual friends of ours. With three of us were living together, and Brent was over. A bunch of us were hanging out, and I was listening to In Utero. Just had it on the stereo, and I got so much grief from my circle of friends at the time about how it sounded like crap. Nirvana's done, and I was like, I like it. And I felt pressure, like peer pressure from my friends to take it out and put in Bon Jovi's New Jersey again. Like, I'm sorry, I had the wrong disc. I meant to put Bon Jovi in.
Well, and some of that stuff is just your perception. You know what I mean? You have an expectation, it doesn't get met, and then you say, oh, but a lot of those songs were written the same time as All Apologies. Kurt was playing that, and when they were doing the early like a Nevermind acoustic, he was doing songs. He was playing All Apologies, and I want to say late 90.
It's one of my favorite songs.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And
the unplugged version, I think, is probably the best version.
It is.
I was actually listening to it earlier today. I love that version, even though I love the studio version. I just like the rawness of the unplugged version was just, I don't know. It was special to me.
Yeah. Well, Nirvana was during that time frame that you're talking. I don't know if you went on to, if you talked about unplugged yet, if you got to the unplugged record yet. I don't want to skip ahead. But
no, I haven't.
Okay. Well, then I won't. But in Versus is another one of those records where there are some of the best Pearl Jam songs that are on that. It might be one where the sum isn't greater than its parts, however you want to call that. Maybe as a whole album, Versus isn't. I mean, I think it's awesome, but there are 3 or 4 songs on there that you're like, that's a top 20 Pearl Jam song. I mean, Daughter and Elderly Woman. I mean, those are songs those are goosebumps when I hear them. Songs still, it's like, and they age so well.
Yeah, they do. And they play, again, I've seen Pearl Jam so many times in concert with Teresa, and you and I have talked about this. There are times when the songs you can hear, like Eddie always starts out, Elderly Woman, with, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. The crowd gets quiet, and then they lose their mind, and then they sing, you're talking 17,000 people singing the entire song back to him. And I love that when a band can do that. Especially, I've seen it done in small clubs. It's great. Now do it with an arena.
Yeah.
And then you see, I always joke with you. I've said it to you before, and I say it to Teresa all the time. And you look up on stage and you see Stone Gossard, this mastermind who, honest to God, looks like a guy who could be doing. It's like a CPA. He could be doing your
I think,
taxes right after the show.
and he could go out and not be
He's the most
recognized. Probably he could. I mean, he could
unpretentious.
go. He could walk downtown since he could knock through Cincinnati and no
He
one would
could
know who he
knock on my
was.
door and I'd be like, "You look like Stone
Yeah,
Gossard," but there's no way that's
yeah.
Stone Gossard.
All the melodies. And I was at I think I've told you this. I was at a party here a couple years ago with some musicians,
Yeah,
and they could not stop talking about Stone Gossard and his influence on that scene. I mean, it was
it's true.
almost like they were trying to tell me something I didn't know, which again I would too. I mean, yeah, they were just like they were the way they were presenting it. They didn't know how big of a grunge. They were like, you know who the real
You know who
person
Stone
is.
Gossard is, don't you?
You know who the real person is behind Pearl Jam, don't you? It's Stone Gossard,
Like,
and
I'm
it
slightly
is.
aware of his work.
But with the death of Andy Wood, and you think about that band because here Green River ended. They get Mother Love Bone. They get this enigmatic. They get this really awesome front man who probably can take them other places. He can be the conveyor for their music. They're writing these cool rockin' melodies with hooks, and if you listen to Mother Love Bone and you're not hooked by that, there's something wrong with you. And it's so good, and that he dies. And it was not, and I've got proof in a closet. I've got like the
Yeah.
first demo tape they made before they were even a band, before they had a name. They went right back in that studio. They got right up on that horse. That's one of the things that's not talked about a whole lot. I think people kind of say, well, in August, no, like, if Andy died in April, by May and June, they were recording.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those things, they were not letting that die because they said, we need a singer and we need a drummer. And probably we're thinking in the back of their head, we're never going to be able to replace Andrew Wood.
No,
And certainly not from some guy that worked at a gas station in
San Diego.
San Diego. Some surfing guy, right?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I said it on my tribute to Andrew Wood, and I know we're getting slightly off topic with it, but Andrew Wood doesn't die, and what you won't get if Andrew Wood is still alive, you don't get Pearl Jam, you don't get Temple of the Dog, you don't get the song Wood by Alice in Chains, you probably don't get Far Behind from Candlebox. There's
You would not.
you possibly don't get is it Black Hole Sun from Soundgarden? There's a line that always thought he was talking about Andy when he says, "No one sings like you anymore."
Yeah, and you may not have gotten a lot of much because just because a song isn't about him in particular doesn't mean that he's not influencing it, or
But you think about
maybe
that.
those events put different thoughts and feelings. Cornell. One of the great things when he talks about Andy, it is just so awesome. If you've ever seen that Andrew Wood
love.
documentary, it is love. There was such respect there, but he really lets his guard down, and he's like, oh, people think the end of the Innocents, that scene was when Kurt died. He's like, no, it wasn't. It was when Andy died, and Andy and him were so close that when he was in the hospital and he's hooked up to all this stuff,
Yeah.
and they could pull the plug at any moment, but they wanted Chris Cornell to have time to fly back from New York City to see his friend for the last time. And he thought that was weird. He's like, what? He's like, he's alive, but he's dead. Like, what? You're keeping him alive so I can go, but that, like I said, that how close that relationship was. So I'm sure it inspired his music and inspired him as a person as he went. I'm sure he was never the same. And you'll hear Jeff Ament talk about it when he's like, hey, if you've never seen a person die from a drug overdose, if you've never seen it in person, like a person that you knew as a friend, and then you see them all puffed up, bloated, whatever the word you want to use, you see them, he's like, if that isn't enough to get you off of it, nothing will.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say you're right on that.
Yeah. So it's just that his death affected so much. Not only did it, we get this great art that comes out of it, but I'm sure it inspired it in ways that you can't even measure.
I've talked again. I know we're off topic slightly, and I talk about it in the tribute episode that I did with Andrew. But I said at the end, his death affected a young man in Cincinnati, Ohio, that some 30 years later, 20 some odd years later, as I go back, I went to his where he was interned, and I sat there. I said it in the episode. I said I cried over a man I never met, I never knew, but I loved because he just, because you and I are this way. I mean, music affects us, I think, some people differently. And just to stand, I felt like at least I'm in his presence to the best I could have ever been because I never got to see him live. So then when I go see Pearl Jam, when I see Stone and Jeff, at least I'm seeing what's left of Mother Love Bone. And again, I say, if Andy doesn't die, you don't get Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam is now a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band. They are legendary. You don't get that if he doesn't die. That's how powerful. I mean, his this one guy's influence. It's
no, it is. But
you and I could talk forever about it. But
we could. But with Andrew Wood, it was a little bit more. Also, like you're saying, well, hey, how can I've never met this person thing, because that is somewhat where the artistry comes in. Yeah, you can just stand up on a stage and you can sing these words, and those words can resonate with you, okay? Or you can have a performer. I mean, how many people talk about what would Van Halen be without David Lee Roth? I mean, you could have someone up there singing those same words, but it's more than that, right? He's up there kicking and doing this stuff, and there's something about it, whatever it is, you want to call it X factor, we probably don't even know, his persona, his charisma, whatever. It's something that appeals to you, and Andy Wood had that in spades. And you can watch these interviews with him before he's famous, because he's acting like he's famous.
yeah.
And he's brought up on Elton John and Kiss, and he wants to be a combination of that. He loves the flamboyancy of Elton John's outfits, and he loves, I mean, it's really a super cool story. Kiss had the makeup, and he would put he would put the white makeup on him, and he would come up with his own stage name, and that's what he wanted to be. And it's what he was. And then when you put him with those wonderful words, and I always put like Chloe Crown of Thorns, you put it with a song like that, and that's what this is all about. This is why you and I are sitting here talking on a podcast about music, because that's the kind of thing that when you listen to it, you're like, oh, that one can go on repeat. That one's going on the playlist. That's one of the best things I've ever heard. If you don't like, I said, and that's another song. If you don't like Chloe Crown of Thorns, you're not human. I mean, you don't have a heart. I mean, like, that is just, it's gorgeous, and to know that he's, it's very cool.
This has been a Touch of Madness production, brought to you by the creative minds at Tommy Twins Media.